Let's get to Manchester United. They were held by basement boys Wolves yesterday. 1-1. That game finished.
Oh, I'm going to watch this again when I get home tonight.
Stats. Look at you, you sicko. Wolves had more touches in the opposition box and a higher XG than Manchester United. That draw also ended Wolves' 11-game losing run in the Premier League, 12-game in all competitions. Don is still with us, but let's welcome in Rob Dawson, because you saw those 11 teams that were able to beat them before Manchester United, Rob, but Manchester United weren't able to do the job against Wolves.
No, and this is the type of performance that United have been throwing in for the best part of a year under Ruben Amorim. You know, the United fans who turned up at Old Trafford yesterday would have had every right to go there thinking that it was going to be quite a comfortable win, but they know better than that now. And you hear the United fans streaming into Old Trafford last night, and they were worried before kickoff because they know what this team is capable of. You're talking about Wolves, who could be statistically the worst ever Premier League side, and the United fans who turned up just weren't confident that they were going to win, and they were proved right. And you weren't talking about a smash and grab either from Wolves. I mean, you just had the stats up there. Wolves more than held their own. They probably could have taken more from the game. There was, incidents towards the end of the game where the Wolves players, obviously they're on the back of quite a long losing run, were torn about what to do with the ball when they got into United's final third. Did they want to save the ball and play for a draw, or were they trying to win? So it's just another dreadful performance for Man United, another dreadful result, and there's more pressure now on Ruben Amorim.
What's the fallout today then, Rob, in Manchester?
Well, he's just, the manager's under more pressure and has been really ever since he came in. The Wolves result isn't an isolated incident. The home form recently has been appalling. They've taken 3 points from home games against Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth and Wolves. That's simply just not good enough. That United fans again are questioning Amorim's system. He went to a back four against Newcastle. They won that game and kept a clean sheet. Amorim had fewer players against Wolves because Mason Mount was injured, but decided to revert to his 3-4-3 formation, which has irked Man United fans ever since he arrived. There are more calls from United fans this morning that he should go and that he's just simply not the right man. There were boos at half-time and at full-time during the Wolves game. Some of his substitutions were booed. He really needs to win when United turn up against Leeds on Sunday, because if he doesn't, the pressure's going to increase even further.
Oh, yeah, nothing like that coming up against Leeds, Manchester United, when the pressure really is on.
I know. I can't figure this out whether... to watch Manchester United players be so lacking in desire and character, and there was just a lack of fire in their belly. Now, is that because the manager is so uninspiring during the week in training, and he's talking, and his team talks before the game, that he sends his team out and they're not mentally in the right position? Because it's hard to get your head around which way it is. As a player, you would think that all these Man United players are playing for the spot, because they must know that the manager can't last forever the way the results are going. And so when somebody else comes in, they want to be able to keep putting that jersey on. But it doesn't look like that when you watch them play. So is it all coming from the manager? Is he just so uninspiring that nobody's bothered? That's what it feels and looks like.
What does it feel and look like to you, Don?
All of the above. I think Stevie and Rob have probably nailed it. I mean, you go back to, it might be in the Grimsby game or games after, when he's watching his team take penalties and he can't look. He's got his head buried in his arms and he doesn't give off good signals. He doesn't give off confidence signals that he trusts his players. All of the quotes that he said over the last year, said a quote a couple of days ago when he said, "I've made 75% of my decisions were wrong." He's come out recently and said that even the Pope wouldn't make me change my system, and then he did. And it's like, I can't read him. I think there's a lot of honesty coming from him, but sometimes there's a lot of waffle at the same time. And I think the conclusion that I've come to, and I say this with all due respect because I always respect, football players in general, but I think I'm looking at a Man United team now that's just very average. Apart from one or two, I'm looking at a team now, it doesn't matter what system you play. I know they had a good half against Newcastle. Newcastle were terrible, but Newcastle battered them in the second half, and the system change sort of did work. But I'm looking at a lot of individuals that play for Man United, and I'm thinking, they look very average.
When it comes to the manager, Rob, we do hear some interesting comments coming out of his mouth. Were there any special ones after this performance?
No, not particularly. And Don's right. I mean, he can be quite hard to read sometimes, Ruben Amorim. Sometimes after these kind of results, he'll come into news conferences and he'll be absolutely furious. He was after the West Ham game. They were leading that game, then conceded late on and drew 1-1. And he came in and he was absolutely foaming from the minute he sat down. Yesterday, we were kind of expecting him to be similar to that, but he was sort of dancing around the touchline for the entire 90 minutes, screaming at his players. He looked very frustrated all the way through, but then he came in and was relatively calm. He sort of said, well, I'm not going to make excuses because we're missing a lot of players, but just so you know, we are missing a lot of players, as if we didn't already know that. He explained his system a little bit. He obviously knew that the fans would want answers for that. He said that he went back to a back three because he knew that Wolves were going to play in a 5 and was worried about Wolves and how much width they would have. He explained his substitution of Joshua Zirkzee at half-time. Zirkzee had scored the goal in the first half and then was brought off at half-time. He said that he had to bring him off. It was a tactical change because they just weren't coping well enough with Wolves midfield. So he was relatively calm in his post-match yesterday. Whether that is the case when he comes and sees us next on Friday before that Leeds game, we'll have to wait and see. He has been very up and down ever since he arrived from Sporting Lisbon. I think that's probably part and parcel of the kind of run of form that he's overseen. He's never had any kind of consistency in terms of results. That poor lad who's waiting to get his haircut when they win 5 games is still without a haircut, and that tells you everything. They just haven't had that level of consistency, and he's always been kind of struggling to explain his decisions and the results that have followed.
Rob, is there any chance that we will see a managerial change at Manchester United in the near future?
I don't think it'll be in the near future. I mean, as I say, that he's under immense pressure in terms of the fans, and he was booed at, the team were booed at halftime and full time against Wolves. In terms of what the board are thinking, the board will probably tell you that even though the results haven't been as good as they would have expected, Amorim is still on course to meet what they designated as the target for this season. They told him that they wanted United to be back in Europe, and as poor as that result against Wolves was, they are still 6th in the table, which would get you back into Europe. They're only 2 points off 4th and Champions League qualification. So, we are halfway through the league season, and United are still in position to meet that aim. The difficulty comes if form drops off a cliff, or if the players just stop having him. I think if those two things were to happen, then the board would be forced into making a change, because you can't have a dressing room who's not behind the manager, and you can't turn up at Old Trafford every week with the fans, booing loudly and calling for him to be sacked. I think what the board would like is to get through this season, get back into Europe, and then make more changes to the squad, bring in a central midfielder, strengthen the wing-back positions, and then judge him on the first 10 games of next season. Now, if he's going to get that time, he needs results. For any manager at any club, results buy you time. And at the moment, Amorim is in desperate need of some results just to buy him time to get to the end of the season and make those changes to the squad.